Kenny Rogers Roasters is a chain of chicken-based restaurants founded in 1991 that closed down all U.S. locations in 2011.
Pare, tignan natin kung sino kumain sa Kenny Rogers.
Uy, ang daming magaganda.
Ano, hindi lahat.
Oops, parang Vic, bago ang chicks.
Ito, suotan, tablecloth.
Oh, ha? Kumain na to
Oh, Papa, huwag mo iwan si Mama.
Look at that roasted chicken.
Wow, may big back ribs pa.
Look at all those side dishes.
Naman talaga. Ay, macho Don't forget the muffin,
Order na rin tayo.
Most young people might just know the name as a chain of restaurants specializing in roasted chicken, but for older generations, Kenny Rogers was a singer, songwriter, and actor responsible for enduring hits like Islands in the Stream, Through the Years, Lady, and The Gambler. John Y. Brown left his mark on the fast food business when he purchased the chicken business of fellow Kentuckian Harlan Sanders in 1964. At the time, Sanders had licensed his unique chicken prep method to about 600 restaurants. The poultry was coated in a mix of 11 herbs and spices and cooked in a pressure cooker to infuse the flavor into the meat. It was called Kentucky Fried Chicken to position the product as an exotic Southern specialty. In exchange for the use of the recipe and the Kentucky Fried Chicken branding, restaurants paid Sanders a nickel for the equivalent of each chicken they sold. The entrepreneur, barely out of his 20s, saw a way of getting into the then-booming fast food business. He and a partner, Jack Massey, bought the operation from Sanders for $2 million and recast the concept as a limited service brand. Under Brown's stewardship, KFC would surge quickly to 3,500 stores. He sold the brand in 1971 to Hubline, a liquor distributor, for $284 million. John Brown Jr. would go on to serve as governor of Kentucky from 1979 to 1983. Afterwards, Brown decided to return to the restaurant business. He attempted to recapture big-time success by launching a quick-service chicken chain that played off his notoriety, but John Y's Chicken flopped. He chose to start a chicken restaurant in Coral Springs, Florida in 1991. Forming a partnership with country music singer Kenny Rogers, who had previously released his own cookbook. The first store opened in September of 1991, and Rogers himself was present at the opening. Kenny Rogers Roasters was one of the several restaurants to open in southern Florida that year, owing to the popularity of grilled chicken both in that particular market as well as nationwide. The chain would become known for serving its specialty wood-fire roasted chicken, plus homemade muffins, jacket potatoes, vegetable salads, pastas, soups, desserts, and beverages. By 1995, the menu had expanded to include turkey, ribs, and various side dishes. The chain grew to over 350 restaurants, including locations in Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and Canada. Since its beginning, Kenny Rogers Roasters found itself in competition with Boston Chicken, who would later be renamed Boston Market, and other several smaller roasted chicken chains. Kentucky Fried Chicken would also introduce a roasted chicken line of products called Rotisserie Gold to compete with Roasters and Boston Chicken. In December of 1992, Cluckers, a small chain in the roasted chicken market, sued Kenny Rogers Roasters for $10 million, claiming the chain had copied its recipes and menus. The lawsuit continued until Kenny Rogers Roasters purchased the majority stake in Cluckers in August of 1994. Kenny Rogers Roasters would move on to the international market. The chain would expand into Greece, but that endeavor was short-lived, closing both locations within a couple years. Brown would go on to expand the company to a chain of more than 425 restaurants before deciding that he was going to sell his interest in the franchise to Malaysia-based Berjaya Group in 1996. Kenny Rogers himself decided to keep his minority stake. The Kenny Rogers Roasters would become a centerpiece of an episode of Seinfeld, The Chicken Roaster. After a branch opens in the neighborhood, Kramer cannot sleep due to its neon sign shining through his window, so he hangs up the banner to drive it out of business. The branch shuts down at the end of the episode when Jerry unintentionally sabotages it with a soaked rat hat. The plotline of the story was inspired by a real confrontation between a New York City branch of Kenny Rogers Roasters and a neighboring law office. In 1996, the chain announced plans to open in the United Kingdom and purchase locations in various cities. At this point, annual sales topped $300 million. However, the planned restaurants in Britain never materialized. However, by 1998, business wasn't doing so well, and the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in March due to the high operating costs that could not be covered. It was at this point that the singer sought to distance himself from the restaurant chain that bears his name. Kenny Rogers felt that when Roasters filed for bankruptcy, the licensing agreement ceased to exist, meaning he didn't think the company ought to still use his name and likeness for new Roasters restaurants. The two sides eventually came to an understanding. He would receive an annual payment for using his name and likeness. On April 1st, 1999, the chain was bought by Nathan's Famous Inc. for $1.25 million. As a result of the restructuring, many locations closed. In fact, the chain would close all but 7 of its wholly owned restaurants. By that time, rotisserie roasted chicken had become a commonplace in many food supermarkets, as well as large discount warehouse clubs like Costco. By the year 2000, the chain was down to 90 franchise restaurants, 40 of which were found in the US. In 2008, Nathan's Famous divested itself of Kenny Rogers Roasters, selling it to their Asian franchisee, Roasters Asia Pacific Limited, a company which was owned by Berjaya Group of Malaysia. The last Kenny Rogers Roasters operating in the U.S. was located in the Ontario Mills Mall in Ontario, California, which closed on December 31st, 2011. The 2008 purchase agreement allowed for Nathan's Famous and Miami Subs to continue selling Kenny Rogers Roaster items in their restaurants. Nathan's continues to serve Kenny Rogers Roaster items in select locations, such as its flagship location on Coney Island. Today, the restaurant chain is still around, although you won't find any here in the US. There are over 156 locations internationally, most notably in Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, China, Indonesia, India, Brunei, Cambodia, United Arab Emirates, and Thailand. Thank you for watching. If you like this content, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Thanks.